Hey everyone, welcome back to an episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben, that's Josh, and we are awake and alive. For me, it's daylight savings time, which basically means I am 5 hours difference of Josh and not 6 hours. So it's I look like I'm not dying in this moment in time. But also we had an 18 inning game happen. We had some crazy football happening over the weekend. We saw the Browns once again have a great defensive performance from one player and then basically wasting a generational talent. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about college football and another firing. It feels like we're just every weekend we're just going to fire a new head coach.
No one's safe.
And I just want to say that the number is now up to almost 200 million US dollars of buyout money that is dead money. So, anyways, there's a lot happening. But Josh, before we get into it, how is your week going? How's it feel like? Basically, just it's like dark by the time it's. I mean, for you it doesn't really matter, but for me, it's like dark so early now.
Yeah, once we hit daylight savings over here, with the way my sleep schedule works, is I will probably only get the opportunity to see the sun for an hour a day for the foreseeable future. And my body didn't handle that change all that great last year. I went through about a 2 week stretch of just not being able to sleep. I describe it as I just laid in my bed for 7 hours with my eyes closed, is what it felt like. And I hope
Oh,
that's not the case again, but every now and then, yeah, my body just doesn't agree with night shift, but that's hopefully a trend that doesn't continue with daylight savings
mm.
this time around. But really productive weekend. I'm learning about Harry Potter, Ben. Started dating a
Really?
girl that really loves Harry Potter, and she's also trying to learn sports.
You?
Yeah, so she's trying to learn sports, and I've never seen Harry Potter, so it's kind of one of those things. Just like if you care about it, I'll try to
Wait,
care
hold
about
on.
it.
This is the guy, whenever I bring up a Harry Potter reference in the past in shows, has been clueless of whatever time I bring up.
Clueless, I don't get it. I've never seen. I don't know any characters. I don't know anything about the houses or their identity. But I watched the first one, so I can tell you a couple houses. I can tell you a couple characters. I can tell you a couple dogs, and I
There
still
you
probably will
go.
miss most of the quotes you share. But Harry
Look at
Potter is one
that.
of those. Harry Potter is one of those big three, I think, with
Yeah.
Star Wars and with
Lord of the
the Lord of the
Rings.
Rings, the book
Yeah.
series that became big time movies, and love the original Star Wars. I watched all of those a couple times. Refused to watch any of the new ones just because I think Disney totally ruined the series from what I've heard from the
That's
diehards.
true. It's true.
Lord of the Rings is where I've gravitated more to, I think, being my favorite, but even still, I think those movies could all be cut in half, and real Lord of the Rings fans will kill me for saying that. They're just so long, dude. Unnecessarily long, I feel like.
Stop it. You've never seen the director's cuts then?
I've
Those
never
are like
seen the director's
those are like
cuts.
4 hours.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I could do that.
No, but it is interesting because you're sharing news about Harry Potter. Well, I'm sharing news the fact that I am switching football teams this year for the upcoming football season for the HFL football season here in Hungary. I am leaving the Cowbells after 3 years, which was a great experience, but just realized it was in need of a change, and definitely was after different conversations. And I had a team approach me a few months ago and reach out multiple times. I worked with the head coach in the national team, and so I'm going to go to the Újpest Bulldogs, um, which is kind of cool because my high school is the Bulldogs at ICSB, and now the football team's Bulldogs. The only thing is they're purple, which is still the color I got to get used to. But
Are we talking like a Minnesota Vikings purple, a
yeah, it's kind of
TCU
like
purple?
it's kind of like I guess more like a TCU purple, not like super dark, but not super light. It's kind of in the middle. But no, so that means Josh, I'm gonna have to get you some new gear. I mean, I got you cowbells. I need to get you some now Uwe Bulldogs. And again, it was all good terms. Like I said, I told the players and everything, and it was just a lot of personal thought process, and just I kind of lost the touch of coaching a little bit at the end of the last season. I really wanted to make sure I was in the right place, and this seems like it's going to be a great fit. So I'm excited. It's going to start. We have meetings coming up, and we'll start training in January.
Ben Bowden, The Decision, Part
Hmm.
One.
Yeah, and we'll see how much am I making. Same amount, nothing. So it's no financial degree on that, but yeah. But anyways, Josh, I know we've had a lot to go over, and so let's talk with baseball because um, this World Series has been interesting. I mean, I came off fall break. I'm excited, and yeah, some weird things have happened in the World Series.
Let's just kind of guide to how we got to even game three. And game one was
Dominant.
a heck of a dominating performance by the Blue Jays. The 9-run sixth inning, I think
Almost proved me wrong from what I
it really
predicted.
looked like the formula to beat the Dodgers is just work the starters' pitch count up and then tee off on the liability bullpen. And that's
Yeah.
what happened in game one. And then game two, we
Yamamoto,
saw the
baby.
Dodgers throw the complete game Yamamoto. So it's like, okay, the theory looks like it still stands. Dave Roberts, to his credit, I've never seen him do this, is sticking with his starting pitchers more than he ever has, like
And
being
you
the
know what
big
it proves,
analytics
Josh?
guy.
It proves that analytics aren't the savior to everything. That's what
Well,
it proves.
I think he also is recognizing in addition to that, that these are humans and that his bullpen hasn't been the strength that it's been in the past. The starters have the hot hand, so he's leaving them in. And Yamamoto, yeah, that's his second complete game in a row that he comes out and it's like, okay, if we don't, we want to use as little of the bullpen as possible. So if the starter needs to go 9 innings, so be it. And so Dodgers tie it up, and we fly back to LA for game three. And I thought the same thing was happening. They got to Glass now. I can't remember if it was the fifth or sixth thing, but I was like, it's over. It's over, man. They're going to tee off on the bullpen, and it's 5-5, no after nine. I'm like, okay, eventually the Jays are going to get their run. And instead, we played a whole entire second game, Ben,
Yeah.
where it was like, I think 11 straight scoreless innings it was in
Hmm.
18. And we finally get a Freddie Freeman with the walk-off home run. These guys are coming up, man. Like, first off, Shohei Ohtani, 9 plate appearances, two
Walked
doubles, two
four
home runs,
times.
5 walks. It ended up being five, and it was like, okay, he's the first player to reach base on all 7 of his plate appearances, and then 8, and then 9. So I don't think anyone's ever going to touch that. And then here's how the other crazy thought is: you're intentionally walking Shohei Ohtani and putting a man on base when future Hall of Famer Mookie Betts is up to bat next, and future Hall of Famer Freddie Freeman is up to bat next. It's just like, why are you? It seemed like the right thing to do in the moment, which is crazy, to speak to how dominant Shohei has been. But eventually, yeah, we do get Freddie to hit the walk-off game-winning home run, and he becomes the first player with multiple walk-off home runs in the World Series. But yeah, heck of a game. Uh, Actually, with the way that it works, Ben actually was awake when the World
Yeah.
Series was happening, which is something that I bet he
I
wasn't
don't.
expecting to happen when he woke
No.
up. We
No,
still got baseball?
no, I woke up and I wake up around 5 in the morning and I was like, I was looking and I didn't really check the scores or anything. I kind of showered and everything, got ready, and I was getting ready to get into the metro station and I looked and it said, "Oh, live 18th inning." I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" So I finally get to school and like it was still gonna go. No, it wasn't even the 18th inning. I think it was like the 15th inning or something like that. I can't quite remember. And then I'm getting ready to start my first period class. Okay, this is like what 7:45. I mean, it was like 8 o'clock or something like that. I don't remember what it was, and it was just now finishing. So literally, the game had finished as I'm starting my first period class of the day, which is just mind-boggling to my brain. But it's kind of cool because I've always either been able to catch like glimpses of games, whether that's basketball, hockey, baseball, because of the time difference. Um, Occasionally, like on the weekend, but then during the week I almost never see any of it unless the ending ends very late, and this happened to fall really close, so that's just a very interesting. I guess I'll never forget that World Series game, I guess, for sure.
Crazy enough, that's the second time that we've ever had an 18 inning game. Ties the longest, and the first one happened back in 2018, also with the LA Dodgers involved, and also with the Dodgers winning in a game-winning home run fashion. And I got a story to share with you on that, Ben.
Mm.
2018, that was my first year in journalism. I got the job out in Indiana in July, and now we're in October. And I'm laying out all my sports section stuff. I'm, typing up my recaps for all the high school area events that happen, and I want to include, obviously, something about the World Series game. So I'm like, okay, it's in the ninth. We'll wait. We got a little bit of time before deadline, and it just keeps going and going and going. I'm like, gosh, man, I'm not going to be able to put a full story in, so I'm just gonna, write up something that uh, basically just says at what point the game was at deadline, and then turned it in. And I went home and I watched a few more innings of it. I'm just like, this is crazy, man, how long this game is going. And then it was Max Muncy at that time that hit the game-winning home run. But yeah, to be alive to witness all of that is what a time to be alive, I
True.
guess. I didn't get to watch the game last night. I was following along on my phone with the ESPN GameCast because I was at work and oh. Technically not supposed to be on our phone while on the line,
Hey,
but I
but
was just checking the updates is
hey,
all it was. And I was just like, how long can this keep going, dude? Some of the pitching decisions too, like this when they were in the 18th inning, Yamamoto was actually in the bullpen. It's like you're telling me your game two starter that went 9 innings on Saturday is now warming up for game three for relief. Like what are we doing here? But when you think about it, it's like I mean Shohei's going to be your game four starter. You can't throw him out there. You could throw Blake Snell. I think that would make more sense. But
it's almost like
just
you'd rather risk the try to get the win and then be able to finish with Blake Snell, and then okay, then we can mess it around afterwards if you need to.
yeah, it was one of those things where it's like you never plan to play an 18 inning game, but the Dodgers I think had four pitchers come in and just get one out, like just come in for a third to close an inning. Like Clayton Kershaw had his moment where he came in bases loaded jam, I think it might have been the 12th. Gets Davis Schneider to hit a weak ground ball in the infield, and Tommy Edman makes a great defensive play to get the out at first and save the run and extend it. And then they took him out after that. It's just like, man, Kershaw's a starter. He's got some stamina, and I know they probably weren't planning on him to really pitch at all this World Series, but you don't want to burn through all your arms. Not in a way where it's like we're not going to have anybody available for game four because I think all the pitch counts of the relievers were pretty low for the most part. But it's just like, man, you don't want to get into a situation where you got to throw out Yamamoto or eventually run out of pitchers. And I mean, Toronto was kind of running the same problem over on their end because Eric Lauer came out and threw almost 5 innings of relief, about 70 pitches. It was, a heck of a performance for him. And I want to make sure I get this guy's name right for the Dodgers too. But it was Will Klein. Will Klein, I think, was cut by somebody earlier this year. He was designated for assignment, waived. Like already had been on two teams so far, making the league minimum. Comes in and is the Dodgers' savior out of the pitching staff. Pitches
It's wild.
four shutout innings, gets five strikeouts, 72 pitch effort, and it's him that's holding down the fort over here for the Dodgers, stymieing the Blue Jays for the remainder of the game. So just unlikely heroes all around. Freddie Freeman, maybe not an unlikely hero. We've seen him do this before, but yeah, Will Klein, that's the cool thing about the World Series. Just some of these guys that maybe you wouldn't expect to step up. Like Addison Barger getting the pinch hit grand slam in game one that just erupted the
Hmm.
crowd out in Toronto. Just stuff like that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then when you're on the Toronto side too, they were starting to make some pinch hitting decisions where it's like they took out Bo Bichette, they took out Alejandro Kirk, they took out Barger. I think mostly for like a more favorable matchup at the plate, but it's just like, man, you would Alejandro Kirk's been one of the better hitters. I think he even had a home run in that game or a
Yeah.
big in that game. And I understand as a catcher, like catching 18 innings, that's tough.
Rough on the
I mean, Will
knees.
Will Smith did it. I wonder what he's going to do for game four tonight. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you don't plan to play an 18 inning game, but just some you see the decisions that some managers make and if it ends up being good or bad. And it's a hard position to be in, but yeah, what a game, what an exciting game. And shout out to all the troopers that stayed up late. It was easy for me being a night shift worker to do it. Both instances that there was 18 innings, but there's a couple guys I was texting with that were like, you know what, screw it. I'll
Yeah.
just be tired. I'll be I'm not gonna get to really watch many games like this ever again, but I can be tired for work, one day, kind of a deal.
It's wild. It's wild to me, but it's exciting at the same time. It
It's
makes
two to
baseball
one
makes sense.
Dodgers now, 2-1 Dodgers. Are you leaning
And
any one way? Are you
it's
about to change your prediction in
no,
any way?
no. I mean, look, yeah, Blue Jays have fought well, but yeah, I can't go against this Dodger team. It feels like you walk one guy or you don't focus on one guy. There's another guy to get you either pitching or even hitting. So for me, I'm going to stick with the Dodgers on this.
I was thinking with the Dodgers too, and I hope that we get a 7 game series, but I picked six, and Shohei Ohtani is just coming alive at the right moment. He was one of those bats that was quiet last year's World Series, and even so far this postseason, up until his 6 inning game where he hit 3 home runs. It just looks like his bat's coming alive, and Freddie's been coming up with some big swings. Even the outs that he makes is like, oh, they're just near misses. So I think he's going to continue to do well. And I haven't lost any faith in any of the Dodgers starting pitchers either.
Mm-mm.
And this bullpen going what it would have been like 13 innings or something like that, just allowing I think 2 runs. Like that was an effort that I think they needed to build some
Oh yeah, for
confidence.
sure, for sure.
Yeah. So I'll stick with the Dodgers in that also. Not going to change that. But by the time this episode comes out, we might be having Game 7 happen, so we might have a series complete by then, depending on
Could,
how things. It'll be Game 7, I think, when this comes out, if
yeah.
there is a Game 7, hopefully. That was also what was it, Friday? Maybe it was Friday when Game 1 happened. We had or maybe it was actually yesterday. The days are mixing up in my head, but we had the Equinox where we had it was Monday. So game three. Game three of the World Series, Monday Night Football. I think there are two MLS playoff games. There are a handful of NBA games and a handful of NHL games going on. So like five
Yeah,
of the major sports in America playing
love it.
games.
I
So
love it.
yeah, that's the cool thing about October for all the sports. Having it once. It's one of probably the best month. Oh man, Ben, college football too was not short of its headlines either. There we could spend a lot of time, but for time's sake, we'll just talk about a few of these games. Uh, the Ole Miss Oklahoma game is the only game that I got to watch in its entirety since this was a weekend that I had to work. It was raining, so that
Yeah.
created some issues.
Lane Kiffin
Uh,
loves to
Trin
spark stuff with his mouth, as always.
He does, and there was also moments in that game where it's like, why are you taking out Trinidad Chambliss and bringing in a cold Austin Simmons for like these high leverage moments? And Simmons overthrew a guy in the end zone. He missed a 2-point conversion. I'm like, man, if Oklahoma ends up winning by just a couple points, these are the moments that you're going to look back on and be kicking yourself over. But nevertheless, Oklahoma ends up losing the game, so it doesn't cost Ole Miss at all. And Ole Miss, Chambliss ended up throwing for over 300 yards, and the last time Oklahoma's defense allowed 300 yards actually was when they played Ole Miss last year, and Jackson Dart did it. But still, just doesn't look like the same John Mateer, Ben. And Oklahoma is still relying, I think, heavily on him for their team's success, but it's not enough. And Chambliss, Oklahoma's defense has been good. They've gotten after the quarterback, and Chambliss did have a tough time. Uh, with pressure throughout the game at its moments, but was able to find holes in the Oklahoma secondary, and now Oklahoma has 2 losses and is just facing a situation where it's like one more, and they're not going to be looking at a playoff spot. And Ole Miss improves to 7-1, so very much their season is alive and well. But yeah, Chambliss' final stat line was 24 of 44, not the most efficient, but 315 yards, a touchdown, no picks. Kawan Lacey also had 78 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns in this one. And Mateer on his end, yeah, 17 to 31, 223 yards, a touchdown, no picks. Uh, the Sooners did rush 136 yards in this one, a little more than what you can typically expect for him to get. But yeah, just not the complete team that they're going to need to really be a serious contender. And it's going to be interesting looking at the rest of the season for them because they still got a couple big games, including one this weekend in Knoxville that we'll be talking about later.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Chambliss is I mean, again, they won this game, but he is starting to show, I think, at times signs of that, former Division two quarterback, just at moments. But again, I agree with you. Some of the Lane Kiffin, some of the decisions he makes, I don't know. And uh, look, I just think Oklahoma is just like we even said this at the beginning of the year when they were like 4-0 or whatever. We're like, hey, let's just wait, like let's wait it out because there's just something not right about Oklahoma. And I don't know if it's just the offense isn't always clicking, if the defense seems to be off at times. But for a team that has so much talent and Mateer had so much hype, and me and you even had him at the top of our Heisman list for a while, it seems like ever since he got hurt, this team has just been changed. And I'm interested to see how they do. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah, that's going to be this it's tough to make in-season adjustments like that when you think that things are going to go one way and then it's like, oh shoot, we got to call an audible now. Things aren't
yeah,
the same as they used to be. So, yeah, time will tell with that one. But you wanted to talk about Alabama and South Carolina.
yeah,
I think today that was a
yeah,
game that I think we highlighted or maybe just briefly mentioned. Possible trap game for Alabama coming off of 4 straight ranked wins.
yeah,
You're going on the road at an underrated Williams-Brice Stadium, that road environment. South Carolina hasn't been all that great, so it's a game that you could easily overlook. And I mean,
yeah.
South Carolina did have a lead in this one, but I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on that
Yeah,
one, how that game went, what you noticed.
there's a few things I was thinking about. There's a few games I was thinking about. When you asked me like, "Hey, pick a couple games," and one of the games I thought of was even the Virginia North Carolina game, kind of a similar game, right? Where you have a team that's it's almost like a trap game, right? But they end up finding a way to win an OT. But I look at this Alabama game, and for how ugly this game was at times. I don't know if you saw the highlights. This game was very ugly at times. Ty Simpson still had a pretty good game. I mean, he was 24 of 43, definitely not as efficient as you want to be. He had 250 yards passing, two touchdowns. He ran for 13 yards, but for me, it was one of the things where I think Alabama's defense kind of showed up when they needed him to, because you look at South Carolina and Lenore Sellers just again not bad, 200 yards passing, almost 70 yards rushing. He showed that versatility that we kind of been missing. But you really look at this whole game, and I mean, at halftime, I believe that score was. I'll find it here. Yeah, it was 14-6, and then at one point it was 23. I believe it was 23 to no 22-14, uh, South Carolina. So going into the fourth quarter, you're down 8 points to South Carolina, a team who, Josh, you've said it even on the show that they have kind of underachieved, and maybe been overrated at times. Just not really like they have so much talent but can't really put it together. And I guess what it showed me in this game was it's starting to show me that the signs that we had when we saw against Florida State, some of them kind of bubbled their ugly head in this game. Just some of the lack of discipline at times. Um, Offensively, they're good when Ty Simpson has time, when he's able to make his throws. But I'm just interested, like when they play a team um, that can get after the quarterback, that can disguise things. I'm interested to see how they will do. But yeah, it was just for me an interesting game. The fact that South Carolina put up the game they did. Again, credit to South Carolina, but that Alabama was basically losing to a at the time. What were they? They were 3-4 at the time. They were losing to a 3-4 team and going into the fourth quarter, and that worries me. I think if you're an Alabama fan,
Yeah, a couple things. One, yeah, South Carolina has, for the most part, looked like Lenore Sellers and everybody else, and that's why I didn't pick this as an upset outright. But yeah, the other thing with this Alabama team is this isn't Nick Saban's
mm,
Alabama teams anymore. I think that moments like this are gonna be more of a reality and more of the Alabama football program than what fans probably want to admit. But as far as getting up for the big games, I don't think that you're ever gonna have to worry about Alabama showing up for, we've seen them
no,
win four straight ranked games before this one. They got up for Alabama, they got up for Tennessee, Georgia, Missouri. Like they're going to show up for those. But as far as like being able to, stay locked in and keep that that extra noise out of, this is going to be an easy game and it ends up being a closer call than what you expect. I think that's going to be more uh, something that Alabama fans are going to have
mm-hmm,
to get used to.
mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you got to just say, you know what, we got out of it with a win. But yeah, like you mentioned, Virginia almost had a close call this weekend. I think Wisconsin actually was 0-0 with Oregon at halftime, if I
Yeah, they
remember
were.
correctly.
Yeah, it was very tight. Even like I'm thinking also about like another close game would have been, well, at one point it was close, but even Tennessee and Kentucky, that was a shootout. It ended up being a shootout.
Yeah, I think that one
Uh,
went to overtime.
Miami was
Texas and
Miami was struggling against Stanford until they put on a ton of points in the second half.
yeah, they rolled.
Texas
Texas and
should have lost
Mississippi
again.
State. Yeah,
Texas should have
yeah, they
lost
got
again.
man. Especially after Arch got out. Arch is actually playing his best game of the
Yeah.
season
Can
in
we
that moment too.
can we also tell how bad Oklahoma State is, by the way? They got beat 42 nothing. I'm sorry, in Big 12 play. That is just
Man,
that team has gone down south fast.
yeah, lots of near misses or close calls this weekend. Not there were a couple. I mean, a couple ranked teams went down because they were playing ranked teams themselves, but not like the major upset weekend that it could have been. But there were definitely a couple close scares there.
Yeah.
One other upset that I thought we would see, if you want to call it an upset, was LSU taking down Texas A&M for the first time. Texas
And nope.
A&M's yeah, Texas A&M has looked good offensively and defensively at times. They've also had their fair share of close calls with teams like Auburn and Arkansas, and going into a hard road environment like Baton Rouge, in Death Valley at night. I thought, we'd see LSU get up for this game. But it was going to have to be more of an ugly, low-scoring
Hmm.
defensive bout. Uh,
Hmm.
and LSU did score 25 points in this one. The only problem is Texas A&M, I think, scored what, 49
Hmm.
is what the final score was, and just embarrassed the Tigers on their home field. Uh, so much so to the point that it led to some major decisions made in-house. But before we get into that can of worms, just thoughts on that game and how it went.
Uh,
Big
I mean,
letdown for the Tigers is at the end of the day
yeah,
is when
yeah. I mean, it shocked me Texas A&M played so well because they've been seeming like they're playing with their, their food a little bit, and Reed looked really good again. He's kind of trying to prove me wrong. I feel like every week, I'm like, he's
gonna have to
not
put him back
not
in the
there.
Heisman
Now,
list.
I'm saying like there's just this all this up and down, but
Hmm.
they played well. Their defense is really solid. Again, really good defense. I mean, there was a video of their defensive end that just the LSU lineman just like didn't touch him, didn't even try to block him, just ran right around him. And so again, Texas improved a lot in this week, but it goes back to show LSU is just they're not the LSU that we thought. People always say that LSU, it's one of those places where if you get a coach fired, you actually have to get the governor involved because that's how much Louisiana loves their LSU football. And I believe it's the first coach in the last four coaches they've won in their first 4 years a national title, and Brian Kelly didn't do that, and I think it proves a lot of things right that we have said over the years of Brian Kelly just can't win the really the big ones, and I think consistently do that. And I don't think Brian Kelly's a bad coach. I just don't think he's kind of like a James Franklin. I think in a sense, he has his own flaws, a lot of flaws in the coaching world. But um, yeah, the game was just very interesting. LSU's offense looked so subpar, and I don't know if you're going to talk about it, but I guess the AD had originally asked him, I guess he was going to keep his job, but asked him to fire the OC, and Brian Kelly was like, no, and I'm like, did you not see your offense? Because that offense looks absolutely atrocious. You can't tell me that. So. Yeah, just a very interesting situation, and I think Brian Kelly deserves. He's probably going to get another shot somewhere. Um, it wouldn't shock me if it's back in the Midwest. Um, but like the way Cincinnati's playing, we'll talk about Cincinnati. Maybe their coach leaves, maybe he goes back to Cincinnati. I don't know, but it's definitely an interesting time.
Yeah, let's unpack a couple of those things. So you mentioned the last three coaches at LSU all won national titles, and that would have been Nick Saban, Les Miles,
Ed
and Ed Orgeron.
Orgeron.
Uh, Nick Saban ended up leaving for, a bigger job in the NFL, obviously, but Les Miles eventually got fired, and Ed Orgeron eventually got fired. Uh, for not being able to maintain those winning ways. But
Yeah.
it just goes to show that LSU's program, like LSU as a program, is much bigger than any coach that comes through because
Oh
all
yeah.
the tools and resources are there. That program just wins and recruits itself and has national championship caliber, you know, potential every single year that, you enter a football season. And I thought that when Brian Kelly came in, that he's a guy that was able to win at Cincinnati. He was a guy that was able to win at Notre Dame, put together a 12-0 season, made a national championship there. But yeah, had some criticism of not being able to beat teams that are maybe better than them, like James Franklin. We also know the way that Notre Dame is with recruiting and with things like character and grades and stuff like that. They maybe weren't, they were handicapping themselves a little bit. So you go to LSU where you got all these resources and you're in the SEC where it just means more. Like, man, Brian Kelly could really do a whole lot here. But what I think he failed to do and why this blew up, and I've heard Josh Pate mention this, and I think even 4 years ago when we were discussing all the big coaching changes that were going around, is as far as the fit goes, it doesn't seem like a cultural fit.
Mm.
Like the last 4 years have I think basically proved it. He got rid of LSU guys like Tommy Moffitt, the strength coach that was a part of all three of
Hmm.
those national championship teams, who ironically was on Texas A&M helping the Aggies bully the Tigers on the Tigers home field. You let Corey Raymond go. He ended up going to Florida, the defensive back coach that basically made LSU DBU. And I mean, he eventually came back, but it's just like you're getting rid of all these guys. You're letting big in-state recruits leave the state, which never happened before. You didn't really recruit the state all that great. Uh, you're taking these vacations while your assistants are grinding out. We've seen him like disrespect some of his assistants a little bit, and he just never really embraced, I think, Louisiana to the fullest that he should have, and it ended up costing him. Like, yeah, he won. We don't know what this season's going to unfold like, but he was able to beat Nick Saban in Alabama. He said he wanted, he came to the SEC because he wanted to beat Nick Saban and was able to beat him. But I think 8, 9 win seasons, it's still good. Like Brian Kelly's I think 15th in all-time wins. Like he's a really good coach. I would argue he's a top 10 coach in college football right now, but just didn't use all the tools to his disposal, was pretty arrogant in my way or the highway, not,
Yeah.
hamstringing yourself basically. And so this ended up blowing up in the end. I didn't think that they would actually fire him in season like
Hmm.
this, but he's going to be looking for another job. And I think he will get another one. I don't know exactly where, but I think maybe some of those difficulties, like he's definitely not as easy of a guy to get along with, I think, as some of these other guys, and that might make it a little more harder for him to land another job. But I don't think he's going to be short of phone calls.
No, he won't. And again, we'll talk about the firings here in a second. But speaking of one of the places he used to coach at, which was Cincinnati. So I looked at this Cincinnati game, and the reason why I chose this game, Josh, is two reasons. One, Cincinnati is 7-1, Josh. They are seven and
That's the
one.
quietest 7-1, I think. They
They are
almost
seven and
beat
one.
Nebraska week one,
And can we
and then
talk
they've
about
just rattled
how
off seven straight.
Brendan Sorsby's become like the best dual threat quarterback in the country right now? This dude, after last week, he doesn't pass for many yards ever in a game. He has 1,800 passing yards. He has 20 touchdowns, one interception passing. His rushing stats, he has 69 carries, 425 yards, and seven touchdowns already. Last year, he ran for 447 with nine touchdowns. So he's already with half the carries, has already almost hit that total. So he's combined for over 1,300 yards and 27 touchdowns already halfway through the year, or a little over halfway through the year. Remember, this is a guy that went to Indiana, struggled at Indiana. I mean, he had an okay one full season, but then came to Cincinnati and has really kind of just balled out. And look, he's having a very quiet campaign to make his name known, I think, and I think you're going to start seeing that name kind of creep up. But again, he's not a flashy guy. He just does what he's asked. You have a bunch of Buckeyes on this team. You have Evan Pryor, who ran for 66 yards. You have Joe Royer, who's a former Buckeye. A lot of former Buckeyes actually on this team. But I look at this. So that's one reason. It's just the way that they are just playing this season. I mean, they're 7-1. They have a good chance to win the Big 12, which by the way would be. I think we all were crazy to say that at the beginning of the year. I don't think anybody was thinking that. But then I look at Baylor. They are now 4-4. Sawyer Robinson had 18 of 26 for only 137 yards. That's 5 yards average, two touchdowns. Look, the last like 3 weeks, he has looked like not even close to a Heisman contender. He's looked more like a middle of the pack quarterback who just gets the job done we need to. But at 4-4, like it's hard for me to understand this team because they do have talent for sure. I've seen them play, but definitely not executing. When you give up 41 points, that's not going to help. But Brendan Sorsby is just taking my eyes to a different level with him.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati might be the quietest 7-1 team out there right now, and Sorsby's a big reason for that. He's actually second in the country. I checked, in points responsible for. So those total touchdowns that he's got, a big reason for Cincy's success. And then, yeah, to your point about Robertson, a lot of Baylor's success has ridden and died with him. This is the first time this year that he's actually finished under 200 yards, and then even in a 318-yard effort against TCU in their game before, he had three picks in that one. So. I mean, a lot of Baylor's success was riding on him. There's not a whole lot of other pieces out there, which is why we never thought that as a team they're going to be much better than maybe 9-3. But yeah, that Heisman stock I think is definitely going down. It's hard for me to figure out how to grade him, and we'll get into the Heisman list later. But yeah, Sorsby definitely a big piece for that. I thought it was funny enough that he came from Indiana, and the guy that he's second to in points responsible for is Fernando Mendoza, who Kirk Cinetti
Yeah.
came in and decided to replace him with. And Sorsby's out here like, okay, fine, bet. And they're both, having great seasons at their new programs, just being, good fits at where they're at now. But
Yeah.
before we get into like I guess the power rankings and stuff like that, I wanted to revisit. We had a pretty big episode in 2021 when all these coaching moves were going on because it was
Hmm.
it was the first coaching cycle that I felt like there's no coach that's like impossible to get because we saw Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame, which I pictured always as a destination job and go to LSU. We saw Lincoln Riley leave Oklahoma, which I thought was a destination job unless you go to the NFL. And he
Hmm.
goes to USC. And we saw Mario Cristobal, who, I think of Oregon as a destination job. It really hasn't been treated that way though when you look at their coaching history. And he goes to Miami. It's like, okay, that's his alma mater. That makes sense. But so much movement around there. And Steve Sarkisian goes to Texas. That was a big opening. And Brent Venables goes to fill in that vacancy left at Oklahoma. And Marcus Freeman ends up getting elevated to Notre Dame. And just so many big moves are happening at some of the big programs there, and Billy Napier going to Florida, getting that job over there, and just 4 years later, Napier and Kelly are already both out. Just was curious, just let's revisit how those coaches are doing right now. Sark at Texas, Venables at Oklahoma, Mario at Miami, Freeman at Notre Dame, Riley at USC. Who would you say right now has been the most successful?
Probably Freeman, to be honest. I mean, if you think about it, I
I mean, it's
mean,
hard to argue making a
Sark
national championship game,
Sark would
right?
be the closest other one because he's kind of rejuvenated kind of like the spirit around Texas football, but I don't think it's been Miami technically. I mean, they had this one good year this year, like consistently. Last year, I guess you can count as well, but Freeman's kind of put them on the map in a sense where he's kept them kind of steady up there. Um, yeah, I don't think it's Riley because I think he's had a lot of down years with USC. So I'm going to say Freeman.
Yeah, I think if I had to like go in order, I mean, like I said, it's hard to argue a national championship appearance. So I think Freeman's been able to do better than his, predecessor. Like he's done better than what Kelly was able to do at Notre Dame, getting him to places and winning games that they never could under him. So I think that's got to be number one. I'd probably go Sarkisian at two because he has brought Texas, back to national relevance. Also made two Final Fours with them. Maybe you'd go Cristobal at three because like you said, they haven't won a conference championship. They haven't made a playoff yet, but they've been slowly building to the season that they have right now. So it's just been like a slower progression of what Sark
Yeah.
has done. Uh, Lincoln Riley started off with a bang, bringing Caleb Williams over, but he's been struggling, to get back on his feet, and we'll see how the rest of the season plays out if they can sneak in as maybe that fourth Big Ten team in the playoffs.
Hmm.
And Venables has, been up and down over at Oklahoma. So all that being said, we're in agreement that Freeman's done the best. Who do you think will be the next coach out of this group to get fired? Or will there be one? Maybe not this season. It could be in, a season or two down the road, but you think that another disappointing season of Lincoln Riley at USC or another disappointing season of
I
Venables at Oklahoma leads to one of them
I
out the
think
door?
I think Venables will be the first one to go. I think Riley is kind of saving himself because USC is getting better. I think Miami's kind of being consistent. I don't see, any of these other guys being fired. I think Venables is playing with fire, if you would say. Because I think if he loses a couple more games this year, now you're talking about this year. But I think, especially if he maybe wins 9 games this year, 8 games this year, and then let's say another 8 or 9 next year, I think there's a good chance that they might just change the way it's going because it's obviously not working if you can't get past that hump.
Yeah, I don't think there's any temperature being built up right now that like we would see an in-season firing of any of those guys or even at the end of the season. But if there was a guy that would maybe be next, I think maybe Venables because Oklahoma does see themselves as a blue blood program
Hmm.
and going and winning only 6 games like he has done two times already is I think it's been two times already, pretty unacceptable for a program like that. But they've had a rough way to go in the SEC so far. That schedule has not done them any favors. Uh, but yeah, I just thought that was one of those things where it's like, man, what a season or what a coaching cycle that was. And of course, Marcus Freeman's one of those names that's also being thrown around for some of these jobs that have been open too. Is like, could LSU pull Marcus Freeman? Could Penn State pull Marcus Freeman? How much does he love being at Notre Dame? And
Yeah.
those are all things that's like at the end of the season, I think we're going to see a lot of moves being made, and it also the way that the playoff works is also going to be interesting because we're assuming that Notre Dame is going to win out and make the playoff, and how much does that impact some of these teams that are trying to and go and get their coaching vacancy filled? You got to wait for that to happen or wait for the playoff to unfold over there. But yeah, would not want to be a AD trying to figure all that out right now, firing my head coach in the middle of the season. Power rankings and Heisman, Ben.
Yes.
I'm just going to make it short and sweet. My top five has not changed. So as it read last week, Miami was five, Indiana was four, Texas A&M
Hmm.
was three, Alabama was two, and Ohio State was one. And I decided to leave that that way. Miami got back on their feet. They
Yeah.
Stanford, but they got back on their feet 135 to 7 pretty convincingly. Indiana put a shellacking on UCLA. I mean, UCLA's been on
Shellacking.
a nice little three-game run here where it's like, could they, maybe reach bowl eligibility? And I think Indiana, put the BTA is what
Yeah.
they did over there and brought UCLA back to earth. And the only reason I didn't move Indiana any higher is because I thought Texas A&M, you know, almost equally. Well, the defense didn't allow only 6 points, but they also put up 49, like I said, on a really good LSU defense. We've
Yeah.
been saying that's one really good unit that they got going for them, and they put up 49 on their home field. And then Alabama, they I can't forget about everything that happened the previous 4 weeks. They came out and survived a trap game, so I'll give credit where credit's due. And Ohio State was on their bye, so I didn't feel any reason to drop them at all. So I just decided to keep
Yeah.
the five the way it was.
I couldn't say it better myself. I kept mine the same as well. No need to change. Things have kind of stayed steady during this week with those top five for me, and I think that's the right place to put them.
Now remind everyone of your five because yours I think differs in order to me. Is it Indiana
Yeah,
and Bama are flipped around, right?
yeah. So I had Miami five, four Texas A&M, three Alabama, two Indiana, one Ohio State.
Okay.
So same for me though. So no need to change for me.
Yeah. All right. This Heisman list. I don't really know what to do with it, but I'll go ahead and try to explain myself as I go about here. Had a new face on it last week, Josh Hoover, and I mean he's still putting up the total touchdowns and yards. So I think you might have been at four the last week. Jeremiah Smith drops out of my list this week, and Josh Hoover's at five,
You
drops
jerk.
down one spot. Sorry, Jeremiah. I
I
think
thought
you're the
you don't.
best
I
player
thought.
in
I
college
thought. Wait,
football,
hold on.
but
I thought you don't punish people for buys.
not for buys necessarily. But I was just looking at receiver stats, and I mean, he's honestly the totals that he has aren't much higher than Carnell Tate even.
No, they're not.
Yeah, I hate punishing people for buys, like I said, but it's just one of those things where it's like I've been keeping him mostly there because of the name and the talent, but the numbers eventually got to come around. And I hate having a all quarterback list. Sorry to spoil that, but there's just not been that skill player that's consistently been dominating week to week. And maybe Jeremiah will come out, against Penn State and have a 200 touchdown three or 200 yard three TD game, and I'll have to put him right back. But yeah.
You know that's how it works with you. Yeah, number five for me is Jeremiah Smith. Again, I don't punish people, camera. I don't punish people for people that are on buys, so I'm going to keep Jeremiah Smith there. Yeah, the numbers might not be the same as what I think people thought they would be, but also when you have Carnell Tate and they're also, I don't know, triple teaming you, I think it's kind of hard to have the same numbers as usual, and you have a new quarterback you're getting used to. But trust me, he's throwing him his way. It's just there's usually like three dudes around him, so it's kind of hard to keep doing that every single week.
Valid. Ah, so new to my list is Fernando Mendoza, and I haven't really had him here up to this point.
Always a week ahead of you.
I think 2 weeks behind.
Yeah,
I think you
it's
had him
just
there for earlier than me, and I wasn't really a fan of the totals. I like the efficiency stats, but like I said earlier with the discussion of Sorsby, he's leading the country right now in points responsible for. So while the yards might not be getting there, he's putting the ball in the end zone and guiding
yeah.
his team to the end zone. So that's got to be worth something here. And in a season where it doesn't really seem like anybody's standing out far and away as the Heisman favorite, I'm going to go ahead and stick Mendoza in here for scoring points.
You know, I didn't think I was going to do this, but Sawyer Robertson has completely dropped out of my list. After 2 weeks of just looking rough, and to me, it did not seem like uh, he really where he needed to be. Oh, Josh is about to bash me right now. At number four, I have Brendan Sorsby of Cincinnati. We talk about numbers. I mean, you can't. I mean, his numbers are good. Like he doesn't have 3,000 or almost 3,000 passing yards, but he has 1,800 passing yards, 20 touchdowns to one pick, almost 500 yards rushing, nine touchdowns. I mean, I just it's hard for me to look past that and say like he doesn't deserve to be in this list. I don't care if it's from Cincinnati. I don't care if he's really not a well-known name. I still think he deserves to be in there.
Yeah, I debated around with names like Sorsby and Marcel Reed, and I don't know if I'm quite there yet, but
You're
I
never
won't
quite
argue
there.
it.
You're never quite there.
I need I'm a little more stubborn and need a little bit more convincing, it seems like. But I'm rarely the first one, just because I don't want to look stupid the next week. But
Oh, I see.
Sawyer Robertson has not fallen out of mine, but he has fallen to three.
Oh,
It's
you.
just the body of work is still there overall, but I just don't like seeing the two games there still. And if it ends up being a third, then I might drop him out entirely. But he's down to three right now. I think he's still leading the nation in passing yards and touchdowns, even despite the way that these last 2 weeks have gone, which speaks to how dominant those first few weeks of the season were and amazing. But you
Yeah.
gotta, yeah, gotta see a little bit more. So he's at three.
Yeah, for me, it's Fernando Mendoza at three. Again, I like the numbers, the efficiency, but also the totals as well. He's started to really have a great season, and it's the first time we've seen an Indiana quarterback. Probably, I mean, Penix and them guys were good, but this guy's at a different level right now. And so, for me, and he's leading an undefeated team. Mendoza goes at number three.
So up to number two is Ty Simpson for me. That guy continues to, quarterback one of the most dominant runs we've seen in the sport this season. Uh, it wasn't, the prettiest win this week, but continues to get the job done and continues to make big throws and big plays.
Yeah, for me, Ty Simpson, I kind of talked about it in my recap. Like I just liked the way he kind of held composure and it was composed and just had a really good game. And he's had great games secretly, kind of quietly, but had really good games as well. Which that means then you've once again followed me in the route that I've went.
This is what I hate about this. We just got on me for dropping a guy out on his bye week, and I am promoting a guy that was on his bye
Dude,
week,
something's
which
wrong with you, man.
isn't It's not a look that I really am a fan of either, which is why I almost decided to move Ty Simpson up to number one. But then he would have jumped Julian, and then we could have used the same argument again. I dropped Julian, but I look at
You
this as
kind of
more of
screwed
like a.
yourself.
It would have been way cooler if I would have just, gone all in on him being number one last week. But I look at this as Julian did not elevate, Sawyer de-delevated,
Elevated? Elevated?
sunk, and so everyone else just moved up one
Okay,
spot.
we'll go with that.
Is how I am going to brand this move. But yeah, Julian Sayan's number one right now, bottom line. And I don't have anything to really go off of this last week since he was on a bye week. But yeah,
Big test this week. Big test this week.
he will have a big test. And why don't we go ahead and start with that game?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because this matchup,
It's a revenge.
Ohio State and Penn State was a game that we thought would have been top five games this college
Oh, for
football
sure.
season. And the way that Penn State's collapse has gone, it just is not that. It's not going to be that. But I think the two things that, even the most casual of college football fans can look forward to in this game is that it is a revenge game. This is Jim Knowles going against his former team, Ohio State. And I'm sure there's a little bit of, animosity there that's going to get, not only Ryan Day excited to go against this guy, but also Jim Knowles,
Yeah.
hoping that he can expose this Ohio State offense because it really hasn't been able to be exposed at all, except, week one when Julian Saint was making his first start ever against Texas. But yeah, I'm sure that Ryan Day would love to hang a 40 piece on Jim Knowles, and I don't know
Oh,
if it's in the cards, but UCLA was able to do it. So
yeah.
why couldn't Ryan Day and Julian Sayin do it?
I'll just say this. I think Ryan Day will have the number one offense out there for every single moment of this game. And I would not be shocked if it's 35 to, let's say 35 to like 10 in the fourth quarter with about a minute and a half to go. Ryan Day is going for that 40 piece. Like, I think Ryan Day has never been this kind of guy, but I think secretly he was really offended by the way Knowles handled this whole situation, and no, and I think for him this is a perfect kind of game to have that kind of revenge game for both of them. Obviously, Knowles going to throw everything he's got at them. But I just don't see how Julian Sains slows down. I mean, this dude's been on fire. And also, what's Penn State offense going to do? They can't throw the ball. Like the last few weeks, they cannot throw the ball. That means you're going to run the ball. You're going to tell Ohio State that you're going to run the ball. You know what Ohio State's going to do? They're going to put eight in the box, and Caleb Downs is just going to be rotating around and trying to find gaps. They're going to struggle to score 10 points today or this week. And I'm really leaning towards, I think Ohio State wins this game. I've been in my head saying Ohio State wins this game 38-9. That's going to be my score. I don't see how this game is close, really, honestly.
Ketron Allen has run the football well in these losing efforts. He got 145 yards and two touchdowns against Iowa last week. He got 90 yards and a touchdown against Northwestern, and he got 50 yards on only eight carries and two touchdowns against UCLA. But the Ohio State defensive unit is just, another level, and I don't know if he's going to have the success against this Ohio State defense, but I agree. And Vegas actually has Ohio State as a 20.5 point favorite, an over/under total of 43.5. So they're thinking like a 32-11 final score, something like that. That'll be happening as the big noon kickoff game in Columbus. But I'm going to go ahead and say that Ohio State hangs 40 on them. I'm going to go 40 to 6.
Whew. That Penn State, that would be just brutal for Penn State fans to
Oh,
just
it
get
would
butt
be.
whooping.
It would be.
And then, by the way, they turn around and play Indiana next week. So,
Yeah. Another game that we would have thought would have been exciting, just a handful of weeks ago, but just it's not been that kind of a season for Penn State. It's
no.
a dead season. Uh, let's go to another slightly other angle here. Playoff elimination game, Ben, between Oklahoma and Tennessee in Knoxville. Both teams are coming into this game at 6-2. Tennessee lately has been surviving some close calls, like we mentioned earlier. They had the Kentucky game that they survived, and I think it was Arkansas that just about took them down, and they really haven't beaten anybody uh, worth noting. They've lost to the two best teams they've played, Alabama and Georgia, this season. And on the Oklahoma side, we've already mentioned, John Mateer doesn't look the same as he did those first few games of the season when he was, running around, beating teams like Michigan and scrambling around and looking like, the Heisman favorite. Uh, so this is one where it's just like, there's somebody is going to have to get their best win of the season this weekend. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that's going to be Tennessee, which I think that Mississippi State is probably the best win that the Volunteers have gotten this year. And on Oklahoma's side, they were able to beat Michigan by, a couple scores over in Norman. They got close with Ole Miss, but you don't get credit for those near misses. So yeah, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you with thoughts and feelings on this one.
Two teams that are trying to find their identity, I think, still a little bit middle of the season. And I think, you know, Tennessee, like you said, they don't have a ton of really good wins. Oklahoma just seems to be just falling apart as since Mateer came back as quarterback. And so for me, this was like a coin flip, honestly. But I think I'm going to lean Tennessee here. I just think Tennessee's been a little more consistent lately. Oklahoma in that loss last week did not look great. So for me, I'm going to go Tennessee wins this game. I'm going to go 34-31.
So a couple things that to look at in this game. So Oklahoma does lead the nation in sacks, but Tennessee is also third. Oklahoma has the second best rush D in terms of yards per carry, and Tennessee's been pretty solid at that. They're 25th. And we've talked about how Oklahoma can't run the football, so that might be a
Yeah.
weakness on a strength right there. Tennessee runs the ball pretty well. They're top 30 in the country in rushing. So is that something that Oklahoma will be able to neutralize? We know Joey Aguilar has been able to, sling it, get a lot of air yards. That's something that's been pretty common in Josh Heupel's offenses. So I'm leaning Tennessee in this one, actually. Tennessee, we'll go ahead and give you guys all the betting numbers here. They're a 3.5 point favorite, basically for home field advantage. They think there'll be a decent amount of points in this one, 56.5 over under total. Yeah, Tennessee, I'm going to go ahead and say wins this one 31-24 and sinks Oklahoma's season and their playoff hopes
Oh,
while
Oklahoma
simultaneously
fans.
keeping theirs alive.
Oh, Oklahoma.
Now, if Tennessee is lucky enough to survive this one, they get to go and host New Mexico, they get to go at Florida, and then they host Vanderbilt at the end of the year. So it lines up favorably. If they can win this game, then Vanderbilt's that one that
Yeah,
on
that's
rivalry week, Vanderbilt's been tough. That's not a gimme. That's like it
no,
has been in the past. That's a tough one. Um, let's stay in the SEC and go with another team that's also been fighting to keep their season alive, and that's the Texas Longhorns, who were able to survive an overtime game with Mississippi State this last weekend. They were able to survive Kentucky just a couple weeks before. They were able to catch Notre Dame, or not Notre Dame, Oklahoma on that first game back for John Mateer, and I think that that showed with the way that Oklahoma's offense just was so dysfunctional that day. But Texas had been surviving, Ben, after they lost those games, week one to Ohio State, and then were upset at the Swamp. They've been hanging in there, but I don't know if Vanderbilt is that team that you can just, hang it by a thread, do
no.
enough just to get by because, uh, I mean, they're 7-1 right now. They're a top 10 team in the country, and they've been getting some pretty solid wins themselves. After that one loss that they had to, what was it, Alabama, they ended up winning on their home field against LSU a couple weeks ago. They gritted it out against Missouri. So they're also not blowing anybody out, but they're beating better teams. And that's something that I think you definitely
Yeah.
have to like going into this matchup. Texas is actually a 2.5 point favorite uh, for this game that'll be in Austin, kicking off at noon. Uh, I think this might be the end of the road for Texas, unfortunately. I think that they've been treading water for a little while and they're finally going to drown.
Which doesn't help Ohio State's resume, but I don't think it matters if you go undefeated. That's what I've always said. But no, I think this is where Texas loses as well. I just think Vanderbilt's playing too well right now to say that it's not going to happen, which is weird to say in my brain.
Yeah,
But yeah, Texas just looks so shaky. And we've always said when you do it once, it's okay. Twice, okay, you got away with it. Three times, not going to happen. And so I think this is where they're going to fall. And I think this is kind of where their playoff hopes fade. And then they got to figure out what they're going to do because there's a lot of things they're going to have to change for sure.
yeah. I also am not 100% sure on Arch Manning's health status in this one. I don't know if it makes a huge difference, but I know he left the Mississippi State game with an injury, and I haven't seen any reports yet, as it is only Tuesday, that he's going to play or isn't going to play.
Hmm.
But whether or not he does play, I think this is a game that Vanderbilt's just gonna, grind out another win. I don't think it's gonna be very high scoring at all. Uh, but give me Diego Pavia and company to win this game 23 to 23 to 17.
Yeah, I didn't give a score. I think I'm Vandy's going to win. I'm going to go 27-16.
All right, we'll go on to another playoff elimination game happening in the Big Ten this time, and that's USC and Nebraska. So right now, USC 5-2 record, Nebraska, the home team, 6-2 record. Nebraska, of course, had that embarrassing loss to Minnesota not too long ago. USC was able to beat Michigan. I think that's their claim to fame this season. They had some close game. They had that close heartbreaker to Illinois that they lost, and then they got beat by Notre Dame. So they really need this game. And I actually, before we get into this game at all, Ben, would just like to discuss the Big Ten landscape right now because right now, Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, I'd say pretty convincingly are going to be playoff teams. I think
Yeah.
that those teams are some of the best in the country, and they're going to, find their way into the playoff, barring any kind of, crazy miracle or injury or any circumstance like that. But the fourth team, if there is a fourth team, is pretty up in the air right now. Iowa is 6-2 right now. Michigan is 6-2. USC is 5-2. Nebraska is 6-2, and Washington is 6-2.
Mm.
Out of those five teams, who do you think maybe is best set up to go ahead and be that next team? Because after USC gets Nebraska, they go Northwestern, Iowa, Oregon, UCLA. It's it's doable,
Oh, yeah, it's
but
tough though.
yeah, they are playing some of those teams that are also fighting for that spot, like that Iowa game, which is could be a tough one. Then they got to go against Oregon, and then you look at Washington, and they've lost their to the two best teams they've played this year, Michigan and Ohio State already. The rest of the year, they got Wisconsin, they got Purdue, they got UCLA, and then they also have to play Oregon at the end of the
Mm.
season. And then you look at Iowa. We already mentioned that they have that USC game on their schedule, but they also have to play Oregon. Uh, and then they got Michigan State and Nebraska also. So it's just there's a lot of these teams that are going head to head here, and I think they might cannibalize themselves. But
I
I
agree.
also wonder if maybe one of those teams that has to face Oregon could take them down because Oregon's schedule, they got to go at Iowa, then they host Minnesota, then they host USC, and then they got to go at Washington. I think there might be a second loss on Oregon's schedule there that won't keep them out of the playoff, but I think the that middle of the Big Ten, I think it might cannibalize itself there with all the head-to-heads there. But first question, can the Big Ten get a fourth team in? And second question, who do you think has the best shot?
I think yes, and I think it's probably Iowa, maybe even Washington. I throw Washington out there, but maybe Iowa or Washington. I'm gonna just throw those two teams out there. They've shown what they can do. I think Iowa's got always a great defense, so I think Iowa for sure, and then you could probably throw anyone else in there.
Yes, like Iowa, like they got, like we said, not an easy end of the season, but they do get Oregon on their home field. Then they got to go at USC, which isn't the strongest home environment. Then they play Michigan State, and you got to beat Nebraska. But USC, yeah, if they can get past Nebraska, then they got to play. They get to host Northwestern, they got to host Iowa, and then they get out to go to Oregon themselves, and then it's UCLA. It's tough. I think it's UCLA or Iowa if there is going to be a team to get in there. Um, Washington is just if history continues where it's like okay they can beat all the teams they're supposed to and lose to all the teams that they're supposed to. I don't think they're going to get past Oregon at the end of the season.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
who knows? Maybe if Oregon loses to either Iowa or USC and then they are also coming in this game both teams with a 9-2 record and this is an
Mhm.
elimination game, man, rivalry week could be fun,
Oh,
Ben.
so much fun.
Could be fun. And you think of Vanderbilt and Tennessee, you think of Georgia Tech and Georgia, Ohio State and Michigan. If Michigan continues to win, they could be that team that
Mm.
just has Ohio State facing its way. And we haven't even really discussed them, but they got Purdue, they got Northwestern, they got Maryland, they got Ohio State. And I think that Ohio State game is why we're not even really even giving Michigan a shot. But
That's true.
yeah, Big Ten is a conference definitely to be keeping eyes on as this season goes on. So back to the USC Nebraska matchup this weekend. Who is it going to be that's going to be, shedding some tears? Who's going to be, living to fight another day for that playoff hope?
You know, after watching Nebraska last week, I've got USC in this game. Uh, I'm gonna say I'm gonna go 41-38. That's what I'm gonna go with.
Big high scoring game. The over under is 59.5 in this one, so they are expecting some points. USC is a 6.5 point favorite in Lincoln, and I'm going to go ahead and say USC wins this game too. I just Nebraska. I'll give Matt Rule credit. He has built them into a solid team, but I still don't see them as a team that's going to be winning any kind of games like this
Mm,
soon, especially with that Minnesota shellacking that they took. So I'm going to expect USC to win this one by at least 20 points. Give me USC 38 to 14.
mm. I like it. I like it.
We'll wrap it up with the 10-15 game. Cincinnati at Utah. I think it's going to be a game worth staying up for. Utah's been one of those teams where it's like they've lost to the two best teams they've played also, Texas Tech and BYU. They've shown that if you can get pressure on him, Devin Dampier doesn't really handle it too well. They don't really have the talent at the skill positions, which is why they play six down offensive linemen most of their snaps. But um, Cincinnati, like we just said, they've been quietly going 7-1 over here. There hasn't really been a whole lot of teams that have gotten in their way, but I think the whole Big 12 conference, like we were just talking about with the Big 10, like top to bottom, the Big 12, like who's going to be the playoff teams coming out of there is where it gets exciting because like all the
Yeah.
good teams are playing, like they all got backloaded schedules. Like Cincinnati's playing, Utah this weekend, and then they got to play uh, BYU and TCU the rest of the season. And then on the other
Talk about a
side, it's
sneaky
like,
team, BYU. They might sneak themselves in.
yeah, they were down to Iowa State by a couple scores and then ended up winning 41 to 27. Bear Bachmeier had another huge game. Utah, though, if they can get past this one, they still got to go at Baylor, host Kansas State. and then at Kansas. So it's probably a little bit easier of a schedule for them the rest of the year. But yeah, Cincinnati. I'm as much as I love Utah, I'm a resident, Utah
Oh
homer
yeah.
in this podcast, if
You
there
are
ever was
very,
one.
very resident Utah homer. Very.
Yes. So it pains me to say this that while I wish all the best for Kyle Whittingham and the program always, that I don't think this is the year that they get back into the playoff just yet. I think Cincinnati is going to go ahead and knock them off, and I don't think many people are going to see it coming because of how quiet their 7-1 season has been.
Oh, I 100% agree. I think also just being an Ohio guy, I've got to kind of pull for Cincinnati on this one. And I think Sorsby, I mean, I wouldn't have him in the Heisman running if I didn't think the guy is going to help them lead to this, to this victory. And I think for me, Sorsby gives them a dynamic. And again, Dampier, I don't think played last week, so I don't know what his health is for this week. But for me, I just dude that Cincinnati defense has been pretty good. They have a few big dudes inside on that defensive line. I think they're going to have a spy on him the whole time. And I also think generally, I think the way that just Cincinnati's been playing offensively, I think it's going to be a very hard team to stop. And I think Cincinnati's going to win this game. I'm going to go 27-20. I'm going to go Cincinnati wins.
Yeah, I'm going to assume Devin Dampier is going to play because Vegas has Utah as an 8.5 point favorite. It'd be crazy to have them that
Yeah.
heavy of a favorite, even on their own home field if they weren't. But one other thing to I think keep an eye on is Cincinnati has I think a top 10 red zone scoring offense, and Utah ranks just about close to 100th in red zone defense.
Mm,
So that could be a couple plays that's like maybe Cincinnati gets seven instead of three, or they just capitalize on their opportunities when they get down there and don't turn it over, and that can swing this game one way if that ends up holding true. So
yeah.
like I said, give me Cincinnati to go ahead and put the nail in the coffin to Utah's playoff hopes. And Utah wins this one, I'll say 27-20.
You mean Cincinnati wins this one, 27-20.
That is correct.
See, look at that homer. It's that Utah homer's coming out of you.
I can't even say it. I can't bring myself to say it.
But yeah, I think there's one last thing we want to briefly talk about before we finish the show, right? The old Brownies.
Yes, obligatory Cleveland Browns talk since this is a sports podcast based in Ohio with Ohio sports fans, and we do have to always, give our due few minutes to Cleveland Browns'
Oh,
disastrous
gosh.
season. And this weekend we saw,
This is the worst
uh,
offense I've ever seen in my life.
yes, I
This is the
think this
worst
is a
offense I've ever seen in my
we've
life.
seen some bad offense in our
This is
day, and this was
bad.
pretty bad offense. And I think what made it even stand out even more as bad offense is how great of defense we saw from Myles Garrett, getting
Dude,
5 sacks on
dude's a
Drake May.
freak.
And even still in that 5 sack effort, New England still is able to put up 32 points.
Can we
And
just can we just say what this offense is like without Quinshon Judkins? Because he went out of the game and the offense like didn't know what to do. Like they literally, I don't think Stefanski knew what to do.
Dylan
And
Gabriel had that one throw where he was in
oh my
his own
goodness,
end zone and threw a check down to nobody. They called
can
intentional
we?
grounding safety.
I'm not a Shador Sanders fan, but can we at least give the guy a shot? Like just at least give him a shot at this point because the dude's averaging 5 yards a attempt. It's ridiculous. We're in the NFL. This isn't college football. I just it's frustrating because you saw Myles Garrett so ticked off on the sideline, but also part of me is like, dude, you want it out of here. Again, we'll go back to that Josh and I've been
He
hammering.
wanted out of it, and you're only here for the money. I don't feel any pity for you. Anything you say in post game about how hard it is to, play this good on defense and offense, not to do anything. This is exactly what you wanted, what you knew you're getting into. You said you believed in the quarterback plan, that it was a good plan. So I don't want to hear any of this, backtracking about how the offense is bad and how it's, miserable to be over here. You can sit on the bench all the way by yourself at the end and be miserable in your own success. I don't care. I'm over it. We could trade Myles
No,
Garrett tomorrow, and I
I would just
wouldn't
say
care.
this. I think the biggest thing is that we are wasting probably the. I think someone said that very interesting. It was a Cleveland talk show, and it said we have wasted now two Hall of Fame careers in the last 20 years. We wasted Joe Thomas's phenomenal career, probably a top five, top six left tackle in all of football history. And then we're wasting probably when he's all said and done Garrett might be the top three all time best defensive end, pure defensive end that we've ever seen. And we've now wasted two of those. And and the fact that it kind of overlapped a little bit. And so for me, this all goes back to, and again, I was against it. I was kind of like okay with it at the beginning, way back when. This goes all the way back to, man, to Baker Mayfield trade and the way they handled Baker Mayfield. I truly believe, Josh, and I've said this before to some other people. I believe that if they would have kept Baker Mayfield and just stuck it out and got him actual surgery and actually helped him figure out what was going on with his arms or whatever, that this team would be a playoff team right now and a consistent playoff team. I truly do believe that. And I believe that because we had the guys, we had Nick Chubb, we had Garrett, we had all these other guys. But I just, and I, honestly, Josh, I don't know if this owner cares about the Cleveland Browns. I really question it now. Multiple times I've questioned it. And I don't know. I don't know how to respond to it because, yes, spends money, he's building these big stadiums, but like, is the stadium what the fans wanted or is what you wanted to be flashy? That's the question I always ask.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and work through all those things. Wasting primes and Hall of Fame careers is just what we do in Cleveland at this
That's true.
point. Like you said, Joe Thomas, but even like just prime like superstars, like we wasted prime Denzel Ward, we wasted prime Nick Chubb, we wasted prime Jarvis Landry. In baseball, we are wasting the prime of Jose Ramirez's career and on a Hall of Fame career over there. And in basketball, we almost wasted a prime LeBron until he came back, and we might be wasting a prime Donovan Mitchell right now with the Cavs. It's just what we do over here in Cleveland. So, yes, to your point there, I agree. And I think two things can be true at once with Baker Mayfield. You got the crowd that says, well, he would have never been the player that he is now if he hadn't gone through the humbling
That might be
experiences of
true.
Carolina and the Rams. And that can be true, but it also could be true that Baker Mayfield was already good enough with the Browns to be the best quarterback that the franchise has ever drafted or thrown out on the field in, their expansion team era. I think that's also true. And it would have gone way better than what we've seen from Deshaun Watson or Dylan Gabriel or any of these other clowns that we've been throwing out there right now. I was never a fan of this plan from the get-go, as you know, and I think we've seen enough from Gabriel to be like, why don't we go ahead and see what Shador Sanders, has to offer? And then that way, if he really isn't all that ready, he can just get exposed. We can make Dion look stupid. We can make everyone in the media saying he deserves a shot look stupid and basically just shut everybody up.
Yeah.
But of course, that narrative would just be that the Browns ruined Shador Sanders.
Of course it would.
So that's how they would spin it. Instead of, admitting that they were wrong and he wasn't good and he wasn't ready and all that, they would just spin it to that Cleveland ruined him. So
Yeah.
I guess you can't win, and that's why I think a lot of teams end up passing on Shador to begin with because of the circus that was just going to fly around him. But yeah, we're not seeing anything from Dylan Gabriel. It's making us excited about the future, his future in Cleveland, or being like, man, imagine how many games we're gonna win when we can figure out the
Yeah.
rest of the roster and all that.
It's just a sad thing. It really is. But no, that is the show for today. A long, nice, good show. I hope you all enjoyed listening and watching. Uh, I think the question this week, Josh, I think it's a good question. Do you believe, and this is a question for anyone can answer this, but are the Browns ever going to reach the playoffs again within the next 10 seasons? That is a question I'm going to pose because I think there's going to be a lot of answers, different answers. I know that I've had people at school, they watch the episode, they'll come to me at work, people I work with, and they'll be like, they'll have an answer to the question. And I'm interested to see what people would say about this because there is a good part of me that thinks there'll be zero. There's a 0% chance they even make the playoffs in the next 2 years. But anyways, if you love watching
Next 10.
in next 10, but even 2 years, but the next 10, it's an interesting concept. But if you love
It is.
watching or watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube, go and click that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you love listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, let us know by rating our show for sure. That would be very appreciative. And also make sure you answer that question down below. And as always, have a great, phenomenal weekend. And until next time, we'll see ya.